It is Locked on Jazz for the 8th of April. The Utah Jazz getting ready for the Phoenix Suns. Should they lose tonight? Maybe. Legitimately, maybe. Not enough passing. No running. Bad shooting. Wham, wham, wham. The number one offense in the NBA this year is going to be the Utah Jazz. And it's a points game Friday. We look at it all. Coming up on today's edition of Locked on Jazz. Pow.
You are Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
How are you? I'm David Locke, radio voice of the Utah Jazz, Jazz NBA insider. This is Locked on Jazz, your daily podcast on the Utah Jazz, giving you insight, expertise, geeky numbers, hopefully making it way better to be a Jazz fan each and every day. Thanks so much for making Locked on Jazz your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Push the subscribe button, and then feel free to hit the bell as well and notify you whenever we launch anything, POSTCAST or whatever. And also, we're free and available on all podcast platforms. Thanks very much for tuning in. Hope you're doing great. I think I've told you guys this week that I kind of have put the wife and daughter are out of town she's a golfer, so she went to Vegas for the week to be able to hit golf balls. Turned out nice here, but you never know. So I've been home alone, so I've been doing the workout thing. I think I've told you guys this. I cannot move today. I actually went to cryotherapy last night for the first time in 2 years. And I got to admit, I truly love cryo. I don't know if you've ever done it. Cryo's that freeze the body thing. So it is, I love it. The post reaction's amazing. And so I went yesterday for the first time trying to recover because I literally can't move. The bump is like work on the shoulders right now. Kind of funny. So hopefully you're laughing along with me. For those of you that are aging along with me and have these little things over here also, you get a good chuckle out of it. So yeah, trying to ride to get ready for a grand fondo if necessary, and trying to get the winter layer off and get strong again, all at the same time. Maybe a little more than this old man could chew off this year. Not that you care that much. So let's move on. Hope everyone's good. Rudy Gobert was on NBA Today with Malika Andrews yesterday. As always, did a good job. Talked about numbers and impact and his case for Defensive Player of the Year. It feels pretty unlikely at this point, either out of voter fatigue or out of, frankly, Robert Williams has had an unbelievable year. Rudy is contesting, 7.5 shots a game. These aren't totally up to date, 6 feet inside. Last year he contested 8. So teams have, we'll get into this. This is probably a different topic for a different day next week. Teams have moved him so that he's contesting 1 fewer shots a game at inside 6 feet than he ever used to. It's a lot. It's 12, 13%. Teams have made an adjustment to Rudy. And he's got, teams are shooting 51.5%. Last I checked, which is 12.4 points below average. This is probably a week or two old. Last year, teams shot 50%, and they took an extra shot. That extra shot they missed, frankly. Overall, he contests 21 shots a game, which is this year's the third best in the NBA. Robert Williams and Jared Allen. Jared Allen's all over this thing, by the way. And teams are shooting 6 points less well than league average. Last year was 8, and last year was 23 shots. I really think actually the bigger story, and this we'll talk about this next week, because I think it's how ready the Jazz are for the playoffs. And now it's 5 threes a game he's contesting, and teams shoot about 32.6%. But that's whenever we talk about 1 and 2, it sounds so very little. But you know what? 1 less shot at the rim a game. It's good to be a deterrent. But I think it's just teams have just moved him and decided they're not going to attack him. And then the second number is, he's just contesting 3 less shots a game. So it's an interesting pick and roll defense this year is still dominant. He's 0.86. I think last year was 0.86. Year before he's 0.89. The interesting one to me, and again, these numbers are all a little old. Frankly, I just watched Rudy's piece a minute ago before I got on, is this year he's actually been involved in more picks. Like there are actually people engaging him in the pick and roll more often this year than they did last year, which I have to try to figure out what that means. I'm not entirely sure. All right, I do want to get into, and this is what happens, but when you win 50 out of 72 games the year before, 52 out of 72, you end up complaining a lot the next year. I think by definition, I'm not actually blaming anyone, and I've done it along with everyone. Like we're low on passes. Donovan's hero ball, which I haven't actually been on. Not running enough. I have been. Like we don't play with pace. Which lineups do and don't. Number one offense in the league by pretty large margin. Like it's actually not that close. And it's pretty interesting to how it's not close, actually. So if we look at the metrics for the team that has the best offense in the league, it's the Utah Jazz by, frankly, a considerable margin. And then it makes you kind of wonder, well, why have we been complaining all year? And then also, I think a little bit of like, well, what matters in regards to this? So I'm sharing the screen on YouTube, though it's so small, I don't think it does any good. So it's just so you don't have to look at my ugly mug this morning. So the Jazz are a 116.4 offense. The Hawks are a 115.2. Phoenix is a 114.3. Milwaukee, Memphis 114.2 and 1. So the Jazz are 2 points better offensively than anyone else in the NBA. The median team this year is Dallas at 112.1. The Jazz are 4.3 points above the median team. That's dropped a good deal. They were way ahead of that. If we go back and look at November, and we'll do this month by month, Jazz were the number one team. They were 2 points better than anyone else in the Warriors. And they were 8 points better than the median team, which was at the time was Indiana. So that was November with a 1-6, but dominantly better than anyone else, right? A full 2 points better than anyone else in the league. And then Phoenix was next at 3.6. In December, the Jazz were 4 points better than anyone else in the league offensively with a 119.6. And Chicago was at 115.6. And the Jazz were 8 points better than the median team in the league. So through December, the Jazz were considerably better than any other team in the NBA defensively. In fact, if we just look at it for a second and go to January 1, on January 1 of this year, before COVID destroys us, the Jazz are a 119.6. They're 4 points better than the number 2 offense in the NBA at that point. And they're 8 points better than the league. Really a dominating stretch. And I would argue this is actually, first 20 games of the league matter more than the last 20 games of the year, statistically. Now, this year, that's super hard to figure out because of the fact that we then end up into, the minute we get into this first 20, we get into, COVID destroying people. So we go to January, and now the Jazz go 4-12. Their offense is 111.5. It's middle of the pack. It's no longer number one in the league. We go to February, and the Jazz are back up at the number one offense in all of the NBA. So I can do it. You get the concept. If we eliminate suddenly January, where we were just a disaster, and we were the number one offense in the NBA, it's again, and it's not always the same teams, and we were back to being 8 points above league average. In March, we slowed down a little bit, right? We end up not being quite as dominant. We struggle. So we go to 116.6 in March. We're 11th in the league, and we're only 1.2 points above league average. And in April would be great because we played Oklahoma City. And now our sample size is too small, but let's at least have fun with it and see where we come out. Miami's at 131, which is insane. We're at a 120. These are stupid numbers because teams aren't playing. So this is why the last 20 games are not as valuable as the first 20 games. So this is the number one offense in the NBA by a fairly significant margin. And makes you kind of wonder a little bit, at least strikes me a little bit, of like how much of our argument and our complaining was actually relevant. Like, and I don't know if we can do it. I don't know if going back and looking at the number one offense in the league every year and saying, well, that tells you how you're going to do in the playoffs, how important it is. I mean, it does. There is definitely a worthwhile discussion about whether or not, what the value of being the number one offense in the league is. And it's probably more important to be the number one offense in the NBA than it is to be the number one defense in the NBA. We've been the number one defense before in the NBA. And then that became, we saw what happened to that. Like, that didn't help us out. And maybe being the number one offense doesn't matter that much either. I'll dig into that for you next. But the fact is that for all of our complaining and all of our this and losing Joe Ingles and not our, and I'm going to go through some of it here in a second. Like, some of the fact that we're the number one offense in the league still is stunning. Considering there are some things we're not doing nearly as well as we did a year ago, and yet collectively it's still the best there is in the league. So we'll talk about why that is, and what it means. Then we'll also discuss whether or not we should lose. I know, kind of weird. Today's show, Friday edition, brought to you by our friends over at Murdoch Hyundai, located at 4646 South State Street, also located in Logan and in Linden. So Logan, Linden, and 4646 South State Street. The Murdochs amazingly have decided that they will not charge you more than MSRP. It's really quite a statement. It's been going on for a long time. They could have made a lot of extra money. But Blake's like, I'm just not going to the grocery store. I'm not going to church. I'm not going around the community and seeing people who I took an extra $1 from because I could, in a time in which the world allowed me to. It's not how we're going to have relationships. It's kind of awesome. What's also awesome is what Hyundai gives you for the $1. I've done a ton of research. I had the relationship with Blake. There's no question. But I also did all the research myself. And that's why we end up buying 2 Santa Fe's, because for the $1 I could spend, the safety I could get for my kids, and the value and safety features, there was nothing that could match what I could get from the Hyundai Santa Fe. So that's why we bought 2 of them. The Elantra is the North American Car of the Year, so you can check that out. Also, the Sonata is beautiful and drives amazingly. So check them all out at Murdoch Hyundai, 4646 South State Street. I got a report from Nick Angstead of Locked on Mavericks yesterday that the Brownie Batter Built Puff is by far the best one yet. I have not had them, but they are out there. The Brownie Batter Puff from Built. I've had the churro and the coconut marshmallow. They arrived this week with another order. There's also all the regular great flavors: double chocolate, cherry barcia, mint brownie, peanut butter brownie, peanut butter brownie, raspberry coconut, salted caramel, cookies and cream, etc. All available at Built Bar right now. 130 calories, 2.5 fat grams, 4 net carbs, 4 sugars, 6 grams of fiber, 17 grams of protein. I am finding them, particularly with the workouts right now, very valuable this week. One, they kill the extra little where I'm hungry and then I'd start snacking and doing all that. I've just grabbed the Built Puff instead. And then it's better than, grabbing into the jar of ice cream, quite honestly. Use the promo code Locked On to get your 15% or Lock 15. Promo code Locked 15. Feel free to check it out and use the promo code Locked 15 to get 15% off. I'm being told, if I haven't listened already, to the Huber Lab, he just did an episode on cold derby. All right, I will. Tell me he says it's good for you, because it's like gives me the greatest post endorphin rush ever. It could be like, I've always thought there's things in life, right? Cigarettes are so addictive. Other things, the cell phone, like they could announce tomorrow. They basically have, I think, that cell phone like gives us like, transmission stuff in our heads, and we'll still keep using it. I might be there with cold therapy. Like, it's just so fun. Like, I just enjoy it. Like, now it was fun. I had not gone in 2 years because of COVID, so it was great. All right. Number one offenses in the NBA. Okay. Last year, the Phoenix Suns went to the NBA Finals. Just put it in camp number. Oh, wait a sec. Actually, that's not true. I had that just as April. Get back to it. Last year, the Brooklyn Nets, I knew that was wrong. The Brooklyn Nets lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals when Kevin Durant's foot was on the line. And the next closest, Portland Trailblazers, were the number 2 offense in the NBA last year, and they lost in the first round. And the LA Clippers were the number 3 offense in the NBA last year, and they went to the Western Conference finals. Yes, we're aware of that. Didn't mean to bring that up again. Too soon? Forever. Kind of like, I met someone yesterday who was like, I just haven't been able to be a Jazz fan since the Jordan shot. I was like, oh my gosh, it's like a long time ago. All right. The Dallas Mavericks in 1920 were the number 1 offense in the NBA in that weird truncated season. And that Dallas Maverick team lost in the first round. The number 2 team was the LA Clippers, and they lost in the second round. And the number 3 team was the Portland Trailblazers offensively, and they lost in the first round also. So there is not the greatest track record here, just to kind of put it in perspective, that the best offense in the league actually leads you to super playoff success, which is super interesting. The 18-19 season, the Golden State Warriors were the number 1 offense in the NBA, and they lost in the NBA Finals. And the number 2 was the Houston Rockets, who lost in the Western Conference semifinals to the Houston Rockets. The Portland Trailblazers that year went to the Western Conference Finals. Now, this is interesting because this is now out of COVID, out of bubble, back to kind of the old days of basketball. This is also going to be a huge issue for the NBA here for a while of like, what data do we actually believe? The 17-18 season, the Houston Rockets were the number 1. They lost in the Western Conference Finals. The number 2 was the Toronto Raptors. They lost in the Eastern Conference semifinals. And then the Golden State Warriors won the NBA title as the top 3. And we'll do one more back to the 16-17 season on what the best offenses do. This was the Warriors, and they won it at 114.8. The Rockets were 114.1, and they lost to the San Antonio Spurs in the semifinals, and the Cleveland Cavaliers were in the finals. So before bubble action, all these offenses really seemed to matter, and having the best offense did dictate. Like, the Warriors and the Rockets were just and so then the question is, well, maybe that's how much better than you are than average. And so the Warriors and Rockets were 6 and 7 points better than league average. But here's what's really interesting about all of this is the Rockets and Warriors were at a 114.5 as the best. Then this year, the Jazz are at a 116.4. So the Jazz are actually just dramatically, like, their offense. And then number 3 is Phoenix at 114. The Jazz offense is actually just way better than the rest of the league by a full point. And last year, in that weird bubble season where there weren't fans in the crowd, offense was just way up and people shot lights out. And the offensive rating was a 117. What's happened is, if you go back to the non-bubble seasons of 17-18, the offense is a 114, and now best offense is a 116. It's a pretty big jump. The median offense in the league this year is a 112 points per 100 possessions. Sorry, I've kind of blown through that like you're just supposed to know. It was a 108.5 5 years ago, or 108.1 5 years ago. So we're at 4 points more per 100 possessions. Does that mean that everyone's so good offensively that being the best is less important? I don't know, but it seems like that there a little bit. All right, so here's the situation for us of whether we should win tonight or not. If we win one game or Denver loses one game, and Denver controls this, we're guaranteed to the 5th seed. Right? So if Denver loses if Denver loses in their final game of the year against the Lakers, then Denver gets they lose, they can tank to the 6th seed. We don't have that luxury. But if we lost tonight, we at least keep the 6th seed in play. Now, does it matter? The only reason I would say this matters is because Phoenix is just so much better than everybody else. Phoenix is the 3rd best the third best offense and the third best defense in the league. They're the dominant regular season team. They went to the NBA Finals last year. They're completely 100% legit. They are absolutely dominant. And the question is whether you want to get into playoffs and try to avoid playing Phoenix for as long as possible. I don't know if you care about Dallas versus Golden State, frankly. Luka's my viewpoint on this is I'm not particularly excited to play either of them because I'd far rather play the Oklahoma City Blue and win a playoff series. But Luka's so great and so dominating, and we can't guard him. We don't have anybody who can guard him unless we think Daniel House can. He just dictates everything. Finney Smith and Bullock and everybody else gets off because of what Luka creates for them. We've tried every defense imaginable against him and don't seem to have had success yet. He's 6'9", which makes him just truly, completely unguardable in every way, shape, or form. He's shown he can handle the playoffs. Last year, he averaged 31 points, 10 rebounds, and 9 assists. Shot 50% from the floor and 36% from three. They're better than they were before. And they frankly, without Kristaps, are just a better team with great length and can put numerous guys on Donovan. And so they feel like a terrible matchup. And frankly, talking to most teams in the league, Dallas is the team they don't want to play. The Warriors, to me, are a little bit like a cockroach at this point. I mean, they're a beautiful cockroach, and when they play well, they're pretty unstoppable, and Clay had it going again last night. But I just don't have a lot of confidence that on it, and I don't mean this, I say this about a lot of people. Like, we haven't shown me that in a game, whatever, we're knocking Draymond Green, Steph Curry, and Klay Thompson out of the playoffs. Like, I actually feel better. Like, Dallas doesn't have a track record of closing anyone out either. Like, Luka's never won a playoff series, nor has Dorius. A bunch of those guys just don't have that track record of being major players. Spencer Dinwiddie, is their number 2 scorer. Like, that's a pretty big drop to their number 2 scorer in Dallas. So, the thought I have, and then the Warriors, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, I just don't know I don't know how knocking those guys, you beat those guys in a playoff series, you've made a massive jump as an organization. Let's just go with that. And Draymond's going to pull out every bag of tricks imaginable to bother us. Are we ready for that? They seem to have more guile than Dallas has. And so I don't know that I have a preference on either of those two teams. The only preference I would truly have in the playoffs is that I don't think there's any chance Phoenix loses to New Orleans or San Antonio or the Clippers or Minnesota. And I do think there's a chance that the Clippers could beat Memphis. And I kind of think the Clippers are going to beat Minnesota, but I do think there's a chance Minnesota could beat Memphis, frankly. So the 6th seed to me on one level says you don't lose anything by being the 6th. And so you play either Dallas or Golden State. And then you actually have a chance to get Memphis or maybe not Memphis in the second round. Where in the second round, I think you're getting Phoenix, which, hey, you're going to have to play Phoenix eventually. So I think it would be, I don't know. To me, there's some advantageous thing about maybe being 6 is a worthwhile spot to be. And if you lose tonight, then you have the option to watch and see what happens while your game's going on Sunday. Now, I don't know how you lose to Portland. And I don't know that Denver, at the same time, Denver will be playing the Lakers, who won't be playing anyone. How do they lose to a LeBron-less, Anthony Davis-less team also? Both of us could have a hard time losing if we want to. And how do you do it tonight? I mean, I think you do it tonight by just playing your guys 24 minutes, and then if you win, you win. You don't do something dramatic like bench everyone tonight, I don't think. Donovan got rest. Mike got rest. I would go to Royce and say, how long do you need? And Mike, you lose tonight by letting Rudy have the night off. Like, you want your defensive player of the year argument? That's how you do that. All right. Points gained. We'll get that for you. Today's show brought to you by our friends over at betonline.net. And all that is happening there at Bet Online, number one source for all your betting needs, sports info. Find all the latest development, including this week's Masters Champion Odds podcast reviews for all different leagues. Bet Online is continued source for all your betting, wagering information, including live betting, esports, and scores. Head to the website today and get your mobile device to learn more about trends and actions. Bet Online, where the game starts. I just kind of dug into this yesterday. I'm not I don't play. We're not allowed to for the NBA, so I just don't. I thought this was super interesting how they are making games, how they're making golf interesting. If I understand this correctly, you can bet on pairs in their tee times. If I have this right. So, like, for example, Dustin Johnson and Colin Morikawa are teeing off at 8 today, and they have Morikawa as plus half a stroke against Dustin Johnson today. What a fun way to, like, watch golf. I didn't know that this is how you bet golf. That seems like it's such an interesting way to bet golf. Seems kind of fun. And then they also have a 3-ball something or other where you can, I think, gamble inside of like a grouping of 3. So like McIlroy, Fitzpatrick, and Koepka, and then you have the odds on which one has the better round. That makes it fun. BetOnline.net. All right. Points gained. Probably our last one of the year, really. I don't think anything will change. The points gained is the offensive metric that I use to both predict that the Los Angeles Lakers will not make the playoffs when the year starts. Just saying. As well, by the way, did we mention that the Lakers didn't make the playoffs? Did I mention that yet today? Did I mention yet today that the Lakers didn't make the playoffs? Because they didn't. Did I mention they didn't make the play-in either? So the offensive metric looks at an offensive player, the amount of scoring opportunities they use in a game, compare the scoring opportunities to league average. And so in the case of Nikola Jokic, he uses 20 scoring opportunities a game, and he scores 3.9 points more than what average offensive players would use, not lose, sorry, I was saying Lakers, would use. So Jokic is 3.9 points better on an every night than what average offensive players would be. Like, average is really good, by the way. So Jokic is the points gain champion of the year, actually by a pretty considerable margin. And 3.9 is a big number. Steph Curry was 4.0 last year. The last player that was over 4.0 in a season, I believe, was Steph last year. And then Steph, and that's a funky season, right? I think you actually eliminate last season because of the shooting and everything from any metrics. Was Steph Curry's superhuman 17-18 season was over 4. Otherwise, you go to Steph Curry's 15-16 season at 5.8 and Durant at 4.1 and 4 points and Durant at 4.0. So Jokic is having a pretty historic season at a 3.9. Rudy Gobert comes out as the second most impactful offensive player in the NBA, which might be why the Jazz are the number one offense in the league. Mountain Hobbler is telling you to hit the like button to help my YouTube. That's true. My YouTube's only doing average, so you could help me. That'd be great. Durant is 3.3. Giannis is 3.2. Jared Allen is 3.1. And Karl Anthony Towns is 3.0. I wanted to get into this for a quick second. I said I would get into how it's interesting we're the number one offense in the league. I never dug into it quite entirely today. Here's what's crazy to me about us this year. Bunch of our shooting stuff's not nearly as good as it was a year ago, and we're the number one team in the league offensively. And this is maybe where all of the passes to Rudy Gobert stuff actually matters in the discussion, because the ball getting to Rudy Gobert offensively, as I just showed you, is the number 2 most impactful offensive player, really matters. For catch and shoot stuff this year, it's finally picked up recently because House is at 45%, Hernan Gomez is at 42%, Conley's at 42. Boyan's at 39. Royce is at 38. But then we drop off the map this year. Rudy Gay's at 35. Donovan's at 34.6. Jordan Clarkson's at 32. A year ago, listen to our catch and shoot numbers. Joe Ingles, 49. George Niang, 45. Donovan, 43%. Mike Conley, 41. Royce up 3 percentage points at 39. Boyan's always the same. Clarkson, instead of 31, was 37. Donovan, instead of 36, was 43. Rudy Gay, instead of 35, George Niang was 44. Joe Ingles, instead of 34, was 49. So, and we're taking the same amount of catch and shoots as a team this year that we did last year. We're just not nearly as good at it, which is so much of what I thought our offense was as a team, is our three-point catch and shoot blender offense. Teams are beginning to take it away, and we're not as good a shooting team, and yet we're the best offensive team in the league. Overall, last year on catch and shoot, we took catch and shoot threes. We took 24. This year, we're taking 24 a night, and we're making 36%. So we rank bottom third of the league, taking 24 a night, shooting 36%. A year ago, we took 26 a night, and we shot 41% on catch and shoot threes. So we're 5 percentage points less good on catch and shoot threes this year than we were a year ago. And yet we're the number one offensive team in the league. It's really kind of a crazy thought. Again, we're not taking less, actually. We took 26 a year ago. We're taking 2 less. 26 a year, we're taking 24 this year. So we're taking 2 less catch and shoots. For all the reasons we talked about, yet we're still the number one offense in the league. We go to the free throw line a lot, which is Rudy. And Rudy is the number 2 most impactful offensive player in all the NBA, and the first ever player to shoot over 70% from the field and score 15 points a game. This is where his all-NBA voting needs to be recognized a little higher than it's being. His defensive player of the year is an interesting one. But he won't, his all-NBA, he's thought of as a non-offensive player. We've talked about this a lot. His impact is massive. And this is where teams are taking him away. Teams have figured this out. This is where we're so well scouted. Teams know to not let him get the ball. Durant's 3.3, Giannis 3.2, Jared Allen 3.1, Karl Anthony Towns 3.0. LeBron insanely is 2.6, then DeAndre Ayton 2.5, Robert Williams 2.4, Joel Embiid at 2.4, Montrezl Harrell, Domantas Sabonis wrap out the guys that are above. The worst offensive players in the league on points gained are always rookies, and they are again this year, and Russell's not as bad as everyone made him sound. So Michael Porter Jr., who doesn't sound like he's coming back, or maybe I missed it if he is, minus 3.5 was the worst there was in the league in the little bit he played. Here are the players who actually played games this year that are the worst in the league offensively. Jalen Suggs, and actually a little bit concerning as a rookie on how bad he was. Reggie Jackson for the Clippers is the second most negatively impactful. Josh Giddey of Oklahoma City. Well, he may win Rookie of the Year, or Evan Mobley probably will, but he'll be talked about Rookie of the Year, but he was the second most negatively. Julius Randle was the fourth biggest negative at minus 2.2. So these players are taking away the value of the best offensive players in the league. RJ Barrett was next at minus 2.2. Wonder why the Knicks struggled. Then Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Cade Cunningham, Russell Westbrook, minus 1.9. So he just negated LeBron. Dylan Brooks, maybe not the worst thing that he's been out for all year. Davion Mitchell, minus 1.8. Not surprising, he's a rookie. Killian Hayes. Paul George was not, and that was before he got hurt, so interesting to keep an eye on. Cole Anthony, Goran Dragic, Cameron Payne. The Utah Jazz, here's the final numbers of the year for the Utah Jazz in points gained. Rudy at 3.2, Whiteside at 1.1, Bojan Bogdanovic at 1.0, Royce O'Neal at 0.6. We need him. Donovan Mitchell at 0.4, which is a wonderful step forward in his career. Much more efficient than he's been in any other year in his career. Mike Conley at 0.2. Forrest even. Joe Ingles was minus 0.2 before he got hurt. Juancho Hernan-Gomez minus 0.3. Rudy Gay minus 0.4. Jared Butler minus 0.5. Jordan Clarkson minus 0.9. My premise has always been if you're going to be a championship team, you have to try to have all your players above average. How the Jazz were the number one offensive team is kind of crazy because Joe Ingles a year ago was a 1.8. He went down. Mike Conley was a 0.5. He went down. Bojan went up from 0.5 to 1.0. George was a 0.4. Royce stayed about the same. Donovan went up from negative 0.1 to a positive 0.5. And Rudy went from 2.3 to 3.5. So someone likes the hair this morning. Yeah, not a lot's been done to it. That is Locked On Jazz today. A lot of playoff talk next week. 2 postcasts for you. Special guest on the broadcast Sunday, Kevin Pelton, will be joining us to talk playoffs throughout the broadcast on Sunday. So make sure you join us for that. He'll hopefully join us for postcast as well. Have a great